Welcome into Recruit Reaction. We are here and we're going to react. We're ready to react to a huge win by Tennessee. They go on the road to Oklahoma, SEC game. Oklahoma, their first big SEC challenge of really their time in the SEC. 25-15, Tennessee wins it. And we're here to talk about what it means for both programs from a recruiting perspective. We're also going to get into some of the other big games. We're going to talk Auburn. We're going to talk Florida State. We're going to talk Michigan, USC. But before we get going, guys, make sure you hit subscribe to the best recruiting channel on all of YouTube, the On3 Recruits channel. We are here and we are live. We are going to react to Oklahoma, Tennessee. I got Hayes Fawcett. I got Steve Wiltfong. Let's bring in Steve. We'll bring in Hayes in a little bit. SEC visit weekend in Oklahoma. We're going to get to that in a minute. But Steve, 25-15, Tennessee does what we thought they would do. A dominating fashion. It was a 10-point game, but I felt like Tennessee kind of controlled this from start to finish.
Yeah, the Vols came into this ball game with the nation's number 2 offense, number 1 scoring offense, nation's number 2 defense, number 3 scoring defense. They look championship caliber. It is hard to go on the road at night in prime time and get a victory. And Tennessee dominated that game from start to finish. Nico Iamaleava looks like a candidate to be the first pick in the NFL draft. Tim Banks looks like the hottest assistant coach name in college football right now, Tennessee's defensive coordinator. The Vols are rolling, have the nation's number 7 recruiting class right now in 2025. They have Faison Brandon, the number 1 quarterback in the country, committed in 2026. No one recruiting high school quarterbacks better than Josh Heupel and company. They've obviously the defensive recruiting over the first several cycles, a lot of guys with length, upside, versatility, all coming together for Tennessee right now, destroying Oklahoma on the road at night. A great win for Josh Heupel and company.
Yeah, and we're going to get into some of this recruiting talk here in a minute, but you know, seeing Michael Hawkins take over for the former 5-star Jackson Arnold from 2 cycles ago, Michael Hawkins, the true freshman. I mean, I'm not going to downplay the Michael Hawkins take, but I mean, Jackson Arnold the year before, that was the prize. He has 3 turnovers. We see Michael Hawkins, who you and I were covering. He was playing high school football last year at this time. Insert Michael Hawkins. He kind of got it done for the Sooners. We're gonna take a poll here. Trey, are we able to do the poll? All right. Before me and Steve talk about this, you guys take out your phones. Put it up here. Put up the QR code. Who should start at quarterback for Oklahoma? Is it going to be Michael Hawkins moving forward, or should it be Jackson Arnold moving forward? Me and Steve are going to get into it. You guys go vote. This will be live. We're going to show your consensus here when it's over. But Steve, Michael Hawkins looked pretty dang good.
Well, he looked like the moment wasn't too big for him. He was very competitive. Showed a lot of toughness in this ball game, obviously getting flipped upside down, trying to go into the end zone there in the fourth quarter. Played hard till the final whistle. Look, Oklahoma played hard till the final whistle. Their defense played well, in my opinion. But look, Oklahoma, they were a top 5 offense last year. Obviously, their coordinator's at Mississippi State, but their quarterback is at Oregon, Dylan Gabriel. And I understand that when Jackson Arnold was recruited, there were a lot of offensive coordinators and head coaches that had him as the number 1 quarterback recruit on their boards. And they obviously saw enough from Jackson Arnold behind the scenes to believe in him as being the future of this program. But in my opinion, you don't mess with success that you had with Dylan Gabriel, and you do what you can to keep that young man in your program, no matter how talented the guys are behind him, because he is absolutely proven week in and week out. Oklahoma had the number 3 offense in college football last year, and I think they would have loved to have had Dylan Gabriel, a veteran who's played in a lot of college football games, on the field tonight against Tennessee. And I think that when Dylan Gabriel went in the portal, I don't think there was much worry in Knoxville about that. And look, it's kind of, Arch Manning, maybe he's better than Quinn Ewers right now, but Quinn Ewers is working. He went to the college football playoff last year. You have the number one team in the country this year. You don't mess with that. And Oklahoma, they had one of the best quarterbacks in college football last year. And I don't think there was much worry when he went in the portal, thinking that you had Jackson Arnold ready to take the ship on. And Oklahoma's got a lot of these games in the SEC this year.
Oklahoma wasn't thinking when they got rid of Dylan Gabriel, when they let him walk, they weren't thinking like, oh, we got Michael Hawkins. They were thinking, oh, we got Jackson Arnold. And, Jackson Arnold, the offense just didn't look very in sync. He looked rattled. He didn't look confident. And one of the things that we loved about Jackson Arnold in high school was his confidence, was his ability to just strike vertically at any time from any place, anywhere. And he just looks out of rhythm. Michael Hawkins got in and, coming in middle of the late second quarter before half, it's not ideal. Your team's already down. They're not playing well. And he kind of provided a spark. So I don't know if that is something that they're also seeing in practice, and that's why they stuck with him. I was a little surprised that Jackson Arnold wasn't injured and still sat out the entire second half.
Look, Jackson Arnold's not defined by one game against a team that is playing as well as any program in the country right now. I think if you were looking, say, which teams are playing the best right now, you would say Texas, and then you would say Tennessee, and you wouldn't be wrong with either answer, in my opinion. So Tennessee's impressive, and Jackson Arnold's going to have a lot of time and a lot of opportunity to bounce back from this game. And he was the best quarterback at the Elite 11 finals, in my opinion, the year he was there. Again, college programs had him number one on the board. Had a fantastic high school football career down there at Denton Guyer, playing big boy football, playing against great defenses, against great high school coaches. It just wasn't his night tonight. I still think he's the future of the Oklahoma football program. My original point is, though, that you had your guy. He had eligibility. And I know that these quarterbacks get pricey, but you're a program that's won national championships in our lifetime, Josh, and you should be able to pay the vig for a quarterback like that to keep them in your program. And if your depth chart at that position costs more than some other programs, that's a good problem to have, in my opinion. That means you got some very talented guys in the room, guys that you believe in. And I just think having a Dylan Gabriel in a game tonight like that, he's been in those wars and would have been huge for Oklahoma. Look, there's a 12-team playoff. Oklahoma can come back from this ball game, and everything's still in front of them that they're shooting for this season. But they didn't have a veteran quarterback tonight, and it showed.
All right. You guys keep voting. Let's see. They think that Jackson Arnold should continue to be the starter based on the poll. You guys scan the QR code and vote on who you think should start at quarterback for Oklahoma moving forward. All right, let's talk a little Tennessee recruiting and how this win, the 25-15 win over Oklahoma, is going to impact Tennessee recruiting. The polls are already surging. But now with this win over Oklahoma, they kind of are what we think they are, Steve. Tennessee is for real. They just go on the road. They dominate Oklahoma. I know it's only a 10-point win, but it was really in dominating fashion. So what do you think the recruiting impact could be for Tennessee moving forward?
Well, I think you start with Isaiah Campbell, on 300 defensive lineman who decommitted from Clemson earlier today. Chad Simmons with the news that he has upcoming trips to Tennessee and North Carolina. But behind the scenes, the Vols have been in a great position for a while. There was talk that he was going to visit Knoxville earlier this summer. Now, Dabo Swinney has that strict no visit clause. So Tennessee's been working this one for a while. I like the way that one's trending for him. He certainly has to like what he sees from this Tennessee defense. Tim
Mhm.
Banks, Rodney Garner, and his track record. I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing that on 3 RPM start going the checkered oranges way, especially after North Carolina gave up a 70 spot today. Now, maybe he could sit there and look and say, North Carolina really needs me, but uh, they've had their struggles. And they've had their struggles every year, the Mac Brown era, losing games like this one after getting some big wins early in the year. So I like the way that one's trending for Tennessee right now as they put the finishing touches on this class. I think they could try and find another linebacker
Mhm.
in this cycle. I know they want another running back as well. But this class is nearly finished already. It's got 24 commitments. Ranked number 7 nationally. Now they're in a battle to keep Douglas Utu in the fold. Chad Simmons and I both predicted him to flip to Oregon this week. That's still a work in progress, but certainly started to seem like it was going Oregon's way. Oregon really ramped it up after David Sanders committed to Tennessee. Oregon recruiting him as a tackle, I think, is another element that's really helping the Ducks in that recruitment. But Tennessee, phenomenal receiver, tight end class, best tight end class in the country collectively. One of the best pass catching classes in the country. Travis Smith Jr. is having a fantastic senior season,
Mhm.
and then Ray Darius Jackson's one of my favorite players headed to the SEC. So. And then they landed guys like Christian Gass, who can play championship level football. They're beating Georgia on the recruiting trail, beating the programs they're trying to beat on the field, on the trail. And they've done that the whole Josh Heupel era, and now it's starting to pay off.
Yeah, and we're
Really
seeing
pay off.
guys like a George McIntyre, a David Sanders, a Travis Smith. I mean, they got to be watching this game and getting excited. And I know, right now Tennessee might be losing Douglas Utu, their second highest rated commitment, but we're going to talk more about some of these other teams that played today and how they're trying to hang on to what they've got. Tennessee keeps doing what they're doing right now. They're going to be very aggressive. I mean, they're not going to be one of these teams that just playing defense the whole fall and into the winter, trying to hold on to what they got. They're going to be able to get offensive, figuratively and literally, and go out and recruit some more great players to this roster. Like you said, they've won some battles against Georgia. They've won some battles against Alabama. There's really nobody out here on the recruiting trail that I think Tennessee's afraid of. And if they keep winning, that's going to do a lot for recruiting. So sitting outside the top 5 right now, Douglas Utu on flip watch, but Tennessee still got a lot going for them. And, I think you look at a George McIntyre, like you said, Steve, nobody's been recruiting the quarterback position better than Josh Heupel. And you're seeing it now on the field. And when recruits see this, they jump on board. It's that simple.
2 years ago, Tennessee won 11 games. That was the first time that they won double-digit football games since 2007. The way that they're recruiting right now, they're poised to be a double-digit winner annually moving forward and competing for championships. Again, they got their guys under center. That's the most important position to hit. And then I think they're showing that they can really develop their players, strength and conditioning wise, and then on defense. So you look at a guy like Marion Dye in this class for Tennessee. He is 6'4" and 3/4, 268 pounds with outstanding length. There is not a prettier player in the country than the number 1 ranked prospect in the Hoosier State. But when he steps on Tennessee's campus, he is not going to be an instant impact player. He's still got a long way to go as a football player, but he's got the traits, he's got the size, and you see the way that this Tennessee defense is playing, and you think about Marion Dye a few years down the road within the system, and you think special player that can go toe-to-toe with the Alabamas and the Georgias. And it's wins like this that keep it rolling. They're the primetime game. It's the one that people in the country are watching tonight. They go into Oklahoma, the first ever SEC contest for the Sooners. ESPN College Game Days there. It's a loaded recruit section, including 2026 running back Caden Jones. He's the number 1 ranked player in Oklahoma. Before the game, he told me, I could see myself playing at both schools. So Tennessee, one of the schools at the top of his list. He just watched the Vols dominate Oklahoma inside the Sooner Stadium. And so it was a statement win for them. But the SEC, it's a rugged schedule. Tennessee's got some big games coming up down the road, but one thing's for sure, they absolutely look ready to play in them. And with the way they're recruiting, they look ready to play in these games for many years down the road.
All right, let's bring in Hayes Fawcett. We got Hayes. Let's bring in Hayes. Hayes, Tennessee's had some big wins. You heard us talk about it. Anything from your vantage point? I mean, during the George McIntyre recruitment, David Sanders, maybe that was probably one of the biggest ones, but take us behind the scenes of Tennessee recruiting.
Man, so as we've said, Tennessee's definitely recruiting with some of the best in the country right now. They have the number 7 class in the 2025 on 3 rankings, and obviously that's headlined by 5-star plus offensive tackle David Sanders and elite 2025 quarterback George McIntyre. Now, George McIntyre is one that I definitely had a lot of conversations with behind the scenes, and I'm sure both of y'all remember early in his process, Alabama was a team that was definitely trending. But after talking with him and really getting a better understanding of his recruitment, Tennessee really was always a school for him. He kind of played it a little bit like he was gonna potentially end up at Alabama, but yeah, like I said, Tennessee definitely stood out to him, and it was kind of the same predicament with David Sanders as well. So having those two guys lead the class, huge for the Vols.
Yeah.
Look, I look at this Tennessee class. David Sanders Jr. at one point early in his process, I might have said Georgia was the leader. I'm talking way early. I mean, he started getting recruited in 8th grade, but you beat Georgia for him. George McIntyre, him and Bryce Underwood were the 2 quarterbacks in this class that really could have went anywhere they wanted, whenever they wanted. Like Bryce Underwood's at LSU, but if George McIntyre would have called LSU first, he could have went there. He could have went to Clemson first. He could have went to Alabama first. So him and Bryce Underwood were kind of the 2 most coveted quarterbacks in the country. Laganza Shady Hayward is a top 100 safety from the Peach State that took an official visit to Georgia and gave a lot of indication that he was going to end up a Bulldog, but ends up at Tennessee. Tennessee's the program that led the most for him, but they were able to navigate that road, absorb a Georgia official visit, and bring it back full circle and get him in the fold. Travis Smith, you beat Georgia and Alabama for him. Jaden Harmon, you flip him from Alabama. Clemson was heavily involved. So these are heavyweight recruiting battles. And then you also keep guys like Radarius Jackson in state, who's an instant impact receiver in my mind. Christian Gash, you beat Georgia for him. These are all heavyweight recruiting battles. Deshaun Brame, you flip him from Oregon. Hayes, in your opinion, talking to these guys behind the scenes, which one of these was the most impressive recruiting win for Tennessee?
Man, in my opinion, obviously the David Sanders one was huge, but when it comes to like biggest back and forth, that was obviously Deshaun Brame. I remember going into the day before his announcement, he had went back and forth between Tennessee and Oregon probably 4 times. I remember he told me it was going to be Oregon, and then the next morning, whenever he was going to commit, he told me Tennessee, and then the next, hour before he was going to announce, he eventually told me it was going to be Oregon. And after having conversations with him after that first initial commitment, I knew that Tennessee was going to, continue to recruit him hard, and he was going to continue to listen. And, obviously he ended up flipping from Oregon to Tennessee. And, like you said, Steve, at the beginning of the segment, Tennessee definitely, if not the best, tight end class alongside the receiver class. You have Travis Smith, Deshaun Brame, guys like that. It's just very impressive group.
Yeah. And I think, this all comes together because George McIntyre jumps on board in February. He's kind of been the Pied Piper of this class. You talked to David Sanders throughout the spring. It was, I'm going to Tennessee to hang out with George. It was every top recruit. I'm going to Knoxville to hang out with George. He was on campus every big visit weekend. So you get your quarterback, especially when he lives local in Nashville, and he makes it on campus for every big visit weekend. He's the face that every top recruit sees besides Josh Heupel. And I think that's a big reason why Tennessee's class is where it is right now because George McIntyre set the tone.
Hayes, you had the big news today. Isaiah Campbell decommitting from Clemson. You and Chad Simmons out in front of that one. Major recruit target for Tennessee, number 3 defensive lineman in America. Behind the scenes, there's been a lot of smoke that Tennessee was involved. How long was he talking to you about a potential decommitment from Clemson?
Well, in terms of the decommitment, I really didn't, hear much about it. I did hear, not directly from him, but from a source that, there was probably a decommitment coming. However, after, going off of what our colleague Chad Simmons said, he's going to be visiting Tennessee and North Carolina, and I'm planning on reaching out to him soon and trying to get, a more, I guess, in-depth list of schools if he does continue to, plan on visiting other schools. So I'm going to check in on that and see where that's going. But, yeah.
All right. Let's check in on the poll. Can we check in on the poll one more time before we get out of here? Do you guys want Jackson Arnold? Do you want Michael Hawkins? It's going to be a debate that's talked about all week on Oklahoma message boards.
Not a debate here.
I'm sure it's already going crazy over there. The fans think Jackson Arnold. They want to see the former 5-star have another shot. We'll see what happens here. Jackson Arnold, though, was benched. He was benched for the entire second half of this game. Michael Hawkins came in, provided a spark. A lot of recruits a lot of committed Oklahoma players on campus this weekend. So go over to Soonerscoop.com. They're going to have stuff all weekend coming from this game. Big game. First, they dip their toes in the SEC water, did Oklahoma, and they get dominated by Tennessee. It's okay. I think people, for the most part, expected this sort of outcome. We're going to see what happens this week with Jackson Arnold, Michael Hawkins. It's going to be a whole storyline. Steve, any final thoughts on Tennessee, Oklahoma?
Yeah, Oklahoma's defense played well tonight. I mean, Tennessee came into the ball game averaging 640 yards of offense, and they got 345 tonight. It just, the score was never in doubt because you never felt like Oklahoma was going to sustain enough drives to win the ball game. Mm-hmm. But their defense played well against one of the best offenses in the country. Recruits on campus saw a fantastic atmosphere, a program that's ready to compete with some of the best teams in the country, because that's what Tennessee certainly is. And this is a really good Oklahoma recruiting class that ranks 11th nationally per On3, one of the better offensive line hauls in the land. They got a couple really talented safeties in the fold as well. And they got a lot of young quarterbacks on the roster that look capable, that have showed flashes now in their time in Norman. Just wasn't their night tonight. Yeah. It was Tennessee's night. The Vols are rolling along right now here as their season continues, 4-0 and boasting a terrific offense and maybe even a better defense, which is weird to say about a Josh Heupel-led team. But the Vols defense once again rose to the occasion and was dominant again tonight.
All right, Tennessee, Oklahoma fans, talk to us. Let us know. Comment section below. How are we feeling about this game? What does it mean for the rest of the season? And how does it impact recruiting? You guys talk to us. Let us know. Comment section below. All right, let's head to the plains of Auburn. I want to talk some Auburn recruiting. Auburn versus Arkansas. The Tigers lose 24-14 at home in front of some big-time recruits. Wide receiver Caleb Cunningham, who's committed to Alabama, was there. Deuce Knight was there. Shamar No. The list goes on. And Auburn, Steve, did Auburn choke? I mean, was this a choke? I mean, what is going on with Hugh Freeze and the Auburn Tigers right now?
Well, did they throw 4 more interceptions today?
Yeah.
So if you're Deuce Knight, you're thinking, hey, again, I got an opportunity to come in here year one and compete with these guys and get on the field and play with some young, talented wide receivers.
You're hoping, he says.
Certainly.
That, right? You're
exactly
hoping.
Right. certainly. That's what Auburn's selling, right? And that's
But
what
he might not. I mean, that might not be what Deuce Knight's seeing, because he's been to 3 home games now, and maybe Deuce Knight's thinking, well, am I next? Meaning, am I going to be the one that's throwing 4 picks next?
Well, I don't think any quarterback thinks they're going to be the one that's throwing picks, but he's going to be back at Auburn again next weekend for his official visit. At least that's the plan. So that would be 4 visits to Auburn this fall, plus Big Cat weekend. Talking to people that have spent time with him, he sees a need, and then obviously I think he's put feelers out to other elite players on if they would join him at Auburn. Now, will he ultimately go to Auburn? Time will tell. He's committed to Notre Dame. And Notre Dame's trying to get him back for the Stanford game. And I think he also could look at Notre Dame and see an opportunity to make an instant impact there. Certainly they got CJ Carr there, and there's a lot of excitement around the true freshman quarterback that got a chance to get into the game against Purdue 2 weekends ago. But that job's going to be open at Notre Dame next year. Riley Leonard's a 1-year rental. And but Caleb Cunningham talked with Auburn Live, talked with Colt Pinkston, said that Deuce is recruiting him to Auburn, and that if he went to, Auburn doesn't have that quarterback that Caleb Cunningham is looking for right now. He's committed to Alabama, thinks Keelan Russell is a great player. That's in addition to just Jamarcus Shepard being a fantastic wide receivers coach and his track record, and Kalen DeBoer in general. But he told our Auburn staff and Cole Pinkston that if Deuce Knight went to Auburn, that it could help the Tigers' chances. But the biggest takeaway from that is Deuce Knight is recruiting Caleb Cunningham to Auburn. And I think he's had some dialogue with 5-star offensive tackle Andrew Babalola as well, in addition to many of the other recruits that were on campus earlier in the season. Naeem Offord, 5-star corner committed to Ohio State, and his family. They've had dialogue with Deuce Knight and his family about Auburn. So certainly, at the very least, Deuce Knight is keeping Auburn very warm and thinking and gathering information on what his future would look like there with what players. I think he still has a lot of love for Notre Dame. I think he's tight with Burris, Plaxico Burris' son, who's committed to Notre Dame. I think they got a good relationship. Obviously, I think his conversations with Notre Dame have been status quo with Marcus Freeman, Gino Godolgi. Look, Notre Dame's trying to get him back up for the Louisville game next weekend. I think he's going to Auburn for his official visit, but if he showed up at Louisville for the Notre Dame Louisville game, that would completely turn this recruitment on its head, right? But he hasn't committed to Auburn. There's been some talk behind the scenes that there were some dates that have come and passed.
Yep.
So, and I think Auburn's having dialogue with other quarterbacks just in case they miss on Deuce Knight, because that's what they got to do, right? I mean, you can't just put all your eggs in one basket. Deuce Knight's the top target on the board. I think that's pretty obvious. But there's other really good quarterbacks out there that could also be a potential impact player for Hugh Freeze and the Tigers.
Yeah, and we saw Shamar Arnaud show up. Shamar Arnaud out of the state of Georgia, Carrollton, Georgia, cornerback committed to USC. Was he a guy, or is he still a guy that you think that Auburn can flip?
Absolutely. I mean, I think he thought the defensive backs played well, and that Coach Crime and Coach Charles Kelly do a good job of developing defensive backs. And Auburn's defense is playing well early on in the season and in all these games. It's the offense that keeps giving the ball away that's really been their Achilles heel right now. And I went and spent some time at Auburn last week, and Hugh Freeze talked about, hey, maybe I should have gone in the portal. Hindsight being 2020, he didn't. Those were my words there on the hindsight, not his. But he wanted to allocate those funds to other places to get this roster where he wanted it holistically. I don't think he anticipated all these turnovers this year. Obviously, he didn't, and now it's a struggle for who to put out there under center from week to week. We've seen some quarterback musical chairs at Auburn. That's not where you want to be 4 games into the season. But Auburn signed a top 10 class last year. They're tracking for a top 10 class this year, and they're tracking for a top 10 class in 2026. So if the recruits continue to buy in, there's no question there's an infusion of talent coming Auburn's way. They just might have to navigate an up and down season. And today was a down in a very winnable SEC game. And they really, it's the offense that has to look at themselves in the mirror and say, why do we continue to sputter and turn the football over.
Yeah. Arkansas comes to the Plains, wins 24-14, but it didn't really feel that close, but it's a 24-14 victory for Arkansas. And, we're starting to see Auburn has 2 losses at home. I asked you last week, can Auburn continue to lose and still maintain a top 10 class? Could they sign a top 5 class? I mean, prior to the season starting, when Auburn was super hot in August, we were talking that Auburn had a shot at the number 1 class in America. Now, when I was saying that, I didn't factor in that they would have 2 early losses at home and staring down a really tough SEC schedule ahead. So I'm going to ask you again, at what point does this class start to fall apart, or does Hugh Freeze just get a free pass because it's year 2?
Well, I think that anytime you're struggling on the field, at any point, the rails could come off on the recruiting trail. We're not seeing any sign of that just yet with Auburn. There's no chinks in the armor. There's no decommitments. There's no buzz behind the scenes that they're starting to fade with top targets. See, Darian Morgan, arguably the top prospect in the 2026 class, when he talked to Cole Pinkston after the game, he was saying we, in referencing Auburn. He's not committed. Auburn's trending for him. Auburn's crushing in-state recruiting right now, doing a fantastic job since Hugh Freeze and company have got there, prioritizing their top targets in-state. So no chinks in the armor just yet, Josh, but it's not getting easier. Oklahoma, we just talked about them in the last segment. They didn't play the way they wanted to play tonight for 4 quarters against Tennessee, but their defense played phenomenal against arguably the top offense in the country, shaving about 300 yards off what Tennessee's accustomed to gaining in a ball game. So it's not going to be easier for this Auburn offense to come in against the Oklahoma team that's going to be very hungry for a big SEC win, coming off a tough home loss in prime time. And then you got Georgia and Missouri coming after that. So it's, a little bit of a murderer's row. Now,
a little bit.
Look, I mean, Missouri had to survive Vanderbilt this week. Like, every week is tough. Like, just win, baby, right? I'm not mad at anyone that walks out of any stadium with the win these days, no matter who the opponent is. And Missouri's 4-0 right now. I'm just saying, like, there are some winnable games on this schedule for Auburn, but Arkansas was one that I probably would have circled in the preseason and said, hey, they got to have that one to be postseason bound.
Without a doubt. And I just think that, last week there was very little concern over Auburn's record and the way that they were playing. But I'm telling you, I think if they continue to play this way and they continue to look this way, and I know they're going to get some wins, it's not going to be as ugly as it was today. But, if they continue to play this way, I think guys are going to start to question Hugh Freeze's direction, just the general direction of the program, the value that the program can bring to them, the development that they're seeing on the field. I think those things, I think that this Auburn team is dangerously close to losing a couple more games that could sway some recruits' opinions. As of now, everything feels good. Everything seems good. They're still getting guys back on campus. Like you said, Deuce Knight's going to come back again. But I'm telling you, if Auburn wins these 2 games at home, I think Deuce Knight has already flipped. I'm not saying, I just think you and I have been around recruiting enough. We know what it's like in the locker room after a win. We know the pressure a coaching staff can put on a recruit after a win. You can't really do those things after a loss. I know some teams don't even allow recruits in the locker room after a loss. So there is none of that camaraderie. There is none of that chance to put the recruit on the spot and let him commit in front of the entire team. That's kind of how it goes down post-game after a win. Auburn hasn't had that with Deuce Knight on campus. So we'll see what happens next week. Maybe he shows up. Maybe he ends up at Notre Dame. I know there's some whispers there. Yeah.
One school that we need to always make sure that we keep warm in the Deuce Knight sweepstakes, even though we don't give them a lot of dialogue right now, is Ole Miss.
Okay. What about Mississippi State? Are they a threat at all?
I haven't heard Mississippi State as a factor for Deuce Knight, but I do think that Ole Miss lurks in that. Look, a lot of these recruitments, infrastructure and resources are very relevant. These prospects earn that in their recruitments. And I think that, all these programs are lining up their resources and infrastructures for some of these big blue chip battles. And so we'll see how these chips continue to fall. But I think Ole Miss remains in the conversation for Deuce Knight as well. They're not a team that is hot right now, or they're not getting much buzz. And certainly he's visiting Auburn every weekend. He was at Southern Miss last weekend. Caught the game down in Hattiesburg, but back at Auburn this weekend. Going to be back at Auburn next weekend. The intel still favors Auburn, but it's not like it's there's other programs involved. He's committed to Notre Dame, and Ole Miss is there too. So Auburn's not just standing right next to the hoop and banking it in off the square right now.
No, they're not, and they're trying to kick the tires on Luke Nickel, who's committed to Miami. We don't know if they'll circle back on Julian Lewis, who's committed to USC. So you can tell that even the Auburn staff isn't 100% sure that Deuce Knight is going to flip. I would say back in August, now we're almost out of September. Back in August, I think everybody felt it was a if not when scenario with Deuce Knight flipping, and now maybe a little bit murkier.
I think the general vibe is that around Auburn sources is that he's going to end up at Auburn, but we've all been around recruiting. They've all been around recruiting. So we'll see what Deuce Knight's first time through, man. So he's doing the best he can. And he did not have the high school junior year that he wanted to have, went through a bad high school transfer. Yeah. Transferred back home. So I think that this is a young man and a family that wants to be absolutely sure when they make a final decision on the process, because they've already had some ups and downs with some decisions that they've made in his high school career that didn't go the way that they drew it up. And obviously you control what you can control, but Deuce Knight's in a position where he doesn't have to make a final decision right away. Notre Dame would still love to have him. Obviously Auburn would love to have him. You got Ole Miss out there, and who knows if other schools don't come involved in the Deuce Knight sweepstakes as the season gets played out here.
Yeah. All right. Auburn fans, talk to us. Let us know. How are you guys feeling right now about recruiting? Do you still think that the Deuce Knight flip is going to happen? What about Caleb Cunningham? He was on campus. Obviously, Auburn could use a big-time playmaker. Caleb Cunningham committed to Alabama, but can the Tigers flip him? Let us know. Talk to us, comment section below. All right, Steve, let's head to Death Valley. We're going to talk some LSU, UCLA recruiting impact. It was an exciting recruiting weekend. Is number 16 LSU. There was a bunch of top prospects on campus. One, he wasn't a surprise, meaning he showed up as a surprise on Saturday, but the news did break on the On3 network on Friday that Jakeem Stewart would be there. The number one player in the 26 class is, well, there's rumors that he could be reclassifying to 2025, which means his recruitment would be sped up very fast once he makes that announcement. So we're still waiting on that. But today, Jakeem Stewart was in Baton Rouge. Brian Kelly and the Tigers have the number 3 ranked recruiting class in America. And it was a big weekend for them. DJ Pickett, the Bradford brothers, Mario Nash, who's committed to Mississippi State, was on campus. The number 1 quarterback in the 27 cycle, Elijah Haven, he was at LSU this weekend. Steve, what is the recruiting impact from LSU's big win?
Well, prospects always have a great time when they visit LSU, from the culture, the diversity, the coaching staff, the stadium atmosphere. It wasn't a night game at LSU tonight, but recruits still had a fantastic time watching the Tigers get a win over UCLA and improving to 3-1. I haven't put it on our website yet, but Mario Nash just got back to me, Mississippi State offensive line commit. So these are fresh quotes. The offensive line was dominant. The game was very exciting, and LSU continued to fight. Coach Bo Davis is a great coach. That's their offensive line coach. Just a great place to be. I asked him where LSU stands compared to Mississippi State, and he told me that LSU is definitely on my mind, but I'm still committed to State. I'm just taking things one day at a time. Me and my family would decide best in the end. But there were some times where it looked like LSU was in great position for Mario Nash. We've talked about it at nauseum on Inside Scoop and Wiltfong Whip Around. Anytime Brian Kelly's involved in a recruiting class, they are going to recruit the offensive line. Great. It's going to be a point of emphasis every cycle. That's going to be the strength of his football teams. I think it's one of the strengths of LSU's football team last year when they had the number 1 offense in the country. That goes again this year as they look to get things back on track with 3 wins in a row since the opener loss to USC. But getting Jakeem Stewart there, Josh, very interesting, because when you talk to people around Jakeem Stewart throughout the process, they always have pointed towards USC and Ohio State having momentum at various times. But we just know that when it's time, when decision time is coming, that LSU is going to be a program that's going to be there in the end. Frank Wilson, his in-state recruiting, how connected he is, the regular dialogue he has with Jakeem Stewart in his camp, the comfortability. He's had a great time in camp working with Coach Bo Davis, their new defensive line coach. He camped with them in the summer. He's had some great visits to USC. He's had some great visits to Ohio State. Oregon's a factor for Jakeem Stewart. I accidentally omitted Oregon in my story, but they're a factor for him. Definitely. And he's not playing games. He originally was going to be playing games that was going to prevent him from taking game visits because he was going to play on a lot of Saturdays, but now he's transferred to Edna Carr, all, in my opinion, to enroll early in 2025 and not in 2026. And when all said and done, LSU is going to have a great chance to land Jakeem Stewart.
Yeah, and he was one of the big name visitors on campus, but so was DJ Pickett. And I thought it was incredibly interesting, well, not interesting, but important for him to be on campus this weekend, because he started the year watching the Miami Hurricanes in the Swamp. Week later, he was down in Miami to see them play. And he's in communication has never stopped with DJ Pickett in Miami. So to see him back at LSU, I thought it was huge. Also to be around so many commits, like a guy like a Harlem Berry. Let's bring in Hayes Fawcett, because he's dealt with a lot of these LSU commitments, from DJ Pickett to Harlem Berry to Bryce Underwood. What's been your impression of some of these LSU commitments and how they went down?
Yeah, LSU obviously has one of the top classes in 2025. I believe it's a top 3 class, headlined by 5-star plus. Number 1 overall recruit, Bryce Underwood. We have Harlem Berry committed. DJ Pickett on threes, number 1 cornerback. Really just a great class, top to bottom. And yeah, I mean, it's obviously big having guys like Pickett and, Harlem Berry was there today, JT Lindsay, Jakeem Stewart. Just overall, LSU has a great class in 2025.
Yeah, that Derek Meadows pickup late in the summer was a big one when he delayed that recruitment. We all thought maybe it was going to be Notre Dame, maybe it was going to be LSU. He delays it a week. It ends up being LSU. They get the big-bodied wide receiver to go with the Bryce Underwood. Just a really loaded class. I mean, but Steve, before we get out of here, talk a little on DJ Pickett and kind of the teams that are still involved in his recruitment.
Well, I talked to DJ Pickett's dad tonight. He was not able to go on the visit with DJ. He was coaching DJ's younger brother in his own football game, but he texted with DJ, and DJ said it was a great atmosphere. He figured that DJ, by the time I was talking to his dad, he figured DJ was in the locker room hanging out. As Hayes alluded to last week, look, that DJ Pickett recruitment was a war. And at one point, like with a week to go in the process, DJ wasn't going to LSU. He was going somewhere else. But in my opinion, LSU is a program that has, if you add up what program led the most over the last 6 months, I probably would have pointed towards them. So I think it came full circle. He's very comfortable there. He seems at peace with his decision. He's still going through his process, talking to Miami. Mario Cristobal is leading the charge there. He's going to be back for the Florida State game, but he's going to be back for 2 more LSU games, Oklahoma and Alabama. And so I think he's excited to play for Corey Raymond, DBU. His family's got relationships with Patrick Peterson. And I think LSU showed that they can close these blue chip recruitments. I mean, they closed Bryce Underwood early. We haven't heard a thing about him looking around at all. He's locked in. Derek Meadows was one that LSU came on strong late. He was definitely the intel favored other programs for him as well. So LSU has showed this cycle, flipping Cade Phillips, that they can win big-time players in crunch time when their decision is really approaching with their final pitch. And DJ Pickett was one of them, and he seems really at peace and happy about his decision, and his family's saying he's 1,000% locked in. We'll see how the rest of the season goes. Miami wore down South Florida today too. They are clicking on all cylinders. Another big win for them on the road at night. It's hard to win on the road at night.
Absolutely. All right. I wanted to ask you one more question about LSU. We know that they get ahead in recruiting, like you just said. You illustrated that. And this weekend was a good example. Quarterback Elijah Haven, the number one quarterback in the 2027 cycle, was on campus. Joe Sloan just doesn't stop recruiting quarterbacks, does he, Steve?
No, not at all. He's actually going to go see Elijah Haven play on Thursday. That's what his dad, Kwame, told me. LSU, they had 3 2027 quarterbacks on campus today. They all had a fantastic time. Elijah Haven, his dad, they talked about getting to spend time with Coach Sloan and Coach Kelly before the game. Said that they're both down to earth, really great people. You know, he's going to go visit Alabama for the Georgia game. That'll be their first time up at Alabama. The process is still pretty new for Elijah Haven, but he's already been over to LSU a bunch, and certainly that's a program he's excited about. The number 3 quarterback in the country, Colton Nussmeier, was on campus there today to watch his brother carve up UCLA for 352 yards and 3 touchdowns. You know, he obviously feels at home at LSU and likes the atmosphere there, but he's on his own. He's on his own recruitment, and his dad's an NFL coach that's coached in the SEC and coached everywhere, played in the NFL. So that family's, everyone's going to do what's best for them. And then Trent Seaborn was there as well, state champion from Alabaster Thompson, that also got time with Brian Kelly and Joe Sloan and feels very much a priority, just like those guys. So to your point, Joe Sloan just has extra hours in the day. His days are 25 hours long. Everybody else that recruits quarterbacks is 24 hours long, with how good a job he does connecting with quarterbacks and building real relationships with them. He keeps in touch with guys that aren't committed. He still, he trades messages with guys committed elsewhere. He's not looking for another 25 quarterback. He just has meaningful relationships with other guys and maintains those, which there's no better time to do that when we're in the biggest portal era ever. You never know when a relationship may come.
I was going to say, you might as well just keep them all warm. You never know.
He's not trying to go in the portal, though. He's got some good quarterbacks on his roster that he recruited, and Bryce Underwood's coming in. But he does a fantastic job.
All right, LSU fans, how we feeling after the big win over UCLA? Let us know. What's your thoughts on recruiting? Comment section below. All right, Steve, let's head out to Boulder, where the Colorado Buffaloes had an exciting 38-31 win over Baylor, and it went to overtime. Colorado had to take it to extra time to do it. 38-31, the Buffs get the win, and they had some prospects on campus. Offensive tackle Carday Smith, who's committed to USC, Antonio Branch Jr., committed to Penn State, and Byron Baldwin, who's committed to Indiana, were all on hand. Now, Carday Smith, he's an interesting one because Colorado needs offensive tackles. Carday Smith has already flipped his commitment once. I don't think he's scared to do it again if Colorado presents what he's looking for. And he's committed to USC. So right now, committed to USC, but Colorado lurking. And you got Antonio Branch Jr., Byron Baldwin also on campus. So we're seeing some life out of Colorado high school recruiting. Finally.
Yeah, and we know every cycle Deion Sanders and the Buffaloes are good for at least one major flip. And so we'll see who that is as this process continues for Colorado this cycle. And the other thing, when they land a high-profile high school player, those guys play. They can point towards those guys being instant impact players in some capacity. When they're recruiting a high school player, Deion Sanders says it all the time, we're expecting you to come in right away, because his philosophy has been portal. But when we go to the high school ranks, we were recruiting guys that we believe are ready-made and guys that can make an impact on the two deep, if not be starters and be in the regular rotation. So those are guys that are on their official visit. Look, they beat Baylor tonight in just exciting fashion. First of all, Colorado under Deion Sanders, the one thing that certainly stands out to me is how hard they play. I think that every Saturday they compete to the final whistle of the ball game. And that was evident today against Baylor when they scored the game-tying touchdown with no time left on a Shedeur Sanders rollout, heaved downfield. Just an excellent catch, and really right after a heartbreaking play where they should have scored on the play before, but the receiver had it go through his hands and hit his chest and ricochet off. They stayed poised, got the touchdown, and then won the ball game in overtime. It still wasn't a win, and then the fans stormed the field. Like, what an atmosphere for these recruits that were on campus tonight to be there. Just they're 3-1 right now, and pushing towards postseason eligibility. That would be another step forward. Colorado, he took over a program now that was really down, like the worst Power 5 program in the country. And now they just go out there and beat Baylor. Dave Aranda, who's a well-respected football coach, they hung in there. Baylor was throwing everything at him defensively. Shedeur Sanders hung in there, made enough plays, and they got the win. And again, Travis Hunter's the best player in college football, in my opinion. And so he came up big at various points in the ball game as well. And Colorado gets a W. And look, anytime Deion Sanders wants to decide that he wants to recruit high school players, because I still think that's the route he should go ultimately long-term to win. And I don't know who their quarterback of the future is right now. Obviously they're recruiting Julian Lewis. But the guys that they got there now got a big win tonight. They played hard all the way till the end. They were resilient. They came back after the Nebraska game when everybody had turned on them for the most part nationally, got a big win against Colorado State, their in-state rival. And then I think a lot of people were expecting Baylor to come into Boulder tonight and get a win on the road. But, Josh, it's hard to win on the road at night. And Colorado was resilient. They were down most of the game. Sometimes they were down 2 scores. Scored a big win. Fans stormed the field. Recruits there in attendance had to have loved it. Recruits committed elsewhere. We know Deion Sanders is going to flip somebody this cycle. Who's it going to be? Maybe to be one of these 3 guys.
Yeah, and I'm ready for Deion to start recruiting that high school level, because when you watch the game, I mean, you see the guys that he recruits from high school getting it done, whether it's Jordan Seaton, Draylon Miller, Omarion Miller. I mean, they all made plays. Travis Hunter, he actually landed him out of high school. I know he transferred from Jackson State, but originally landed him out of high school. So the guys that Coach Prime lands out of high school end up making a huge impact. I'd love to go see him go get 20 great players. Like, Kirby Smart doesn't land a player like Jordan Seaton and just say, oh, I got Jordan Seaton, I'm going to sit back and just take it easy. I mean, Kirby Smart racks 6, 7 5-stars in a class. And I think Coach Prime could, I'm not saying he could recruit at the level of Kirby Smart, but I do think that if he put his mind to it, if he put his effort into it, I fully think that he could go down to the high school level and get some guys that could make a day one impact at Colorado. I mean, we've already seen it. I would just like to see more of that.
Look, I talked with you. We've talked about it. I talked with Andy Staples about it. First of all, like, these guys that visited this weekend, like, Deion Sanders does a fantastic job when top recruits are on campus. He's as charismatic a guy as there is in college football. He makes you feel at home. I guarantee he's crushing the on-campus visits with Carday Smith and these guys that are on campus. But look, he could have recruited the end of that first cycle like Hugh Freeze recruited the end of that first cycle with Auburn, if not better. That was a hell of a close by Hugh Freeze and Auburn that first cycle. I think that if he wanted to, it would be hard for him not to have a top 10 high school class. So that would have been an infusion of 30 players. Plus, I think he would have landed a lot of the guys that he truly wanted out of the portal anyway. Like, they took a lot of fillers.
Yeah. I see what you mean. Yeah,
I think they would have got those high-end guys that they got out of the portal. I don't think that stuff changes, right? They get those guys they truly coveted out of the portal. I think they still get them. And then they're taking another 20 to 25 player class this year from the high school ranks. That's really sets you up foundationally, in my opinion, to have a lot of long-term success, where, again, there's just a lot of question marks for Colorado next year. And I don't know if there's a recipe to win 11, 12 games with your roster flipping like that every year after year, right? And he's had stability at quarterback, and he's had stability with Travis Hunter. But those guys are two of the best players in college football right now. It's hard to just duplicate that. It'll be hard to replace those guys as well. So I would love to see him attack the high school ranks. If he went into a high school, he'd be phenomenal. It would be the talk of the town, and he would recruit top 10 classes if that's what he chose to do. And I think if they just decided right now to say, hey, we're going to go hard on high school from September 23 on to December 4th, I think they'd get 10 to 12 guys we're not even talking about them getting right now, especially if they can continue to win games like they won tonight. But it's a credit to guys like Corey Phillips and Devin Rispres and stuff that got Coach Box, that got these guys on campus tonight, because it's not like Deion Sanders is pounding the pavement of high school recruiting right now. Not many head coaches are. They're in season. But I just think anytime Deion Sanders wants to hit the gas on high school recruiting, they would get a lot of kids on campus. And then we'll see what happens. Right. And then they'll get their fair share like everybody else.
I mean, maybe this kickstarts it. We'll see. I do think, like you said, they're going to lose a lot in the portal. So Colorado fans, you talk to me, and Steve, how do you want to see Coach Prime approach this the rest of the season? Do you think that you could hit the high school level and really get some impact players? Or do you just do what Coach Prime's been doing, which is relying on the transfer portal and doing all your work in the offseason? So let us know. Comment section below. Could this be the catalyst that gets high school recruiting going? Let us know. Comment section below. All right. We are headed, Steve, to Ann Arbor. We're going to talk some Michigan versus USC. One of the best games maybe that we've seen all season. It's a young season, but one of the best games I think we've witnessed all season. Michigan, they lose at home in front of a lot of recruits. What do you think the recruiting impact of this game is for the Wolverines and for the Trojans, really?
Well, we talked about it, Josh. Look, Michigan took one right on the chin against Texas, but we saw Dan Lanning in Oregon go into Atlanta for Lanning's first game as head coach. Whew. Kind of similar to Sharon Moore's first big game as Michigan's true head coach. And they got destroyed by Georgia. And you know what Oregon did? They packed up, got on that airplane, went home and ripped off a bunch of wins and would have made the college football playoff had it been a 12-team playoff. Michigan, tough game against Texas, arguably playing as well as anybody in the country. Them in Tennessee, they lost at home. But they responded well. Got a win against a USC team that's playing really well. And I thought USC's defense played well in this game. I think that USC's turning the corner. They're showing that they're a physical football team that's looking to take another step under Lincoln Riley, Deontin Lynn, and company. So for Michigan to be able to run the ball like they did this year, to get a lead early, lose it, but then respond to that, come back on that last drive of the game, and win the game on 4th down inside the 5-yard line. Khalil Mullins.
Unbelievable.
It just shows the culture of that program hasn't changed. A lot of guys got promoted. They lost a lot of great coaches. They lost a lot of great players. So guys got promoted on the depth chart. Coaches got promoted from within, strength coach, all the way up to that corner office with Sharon Moore. And they came out there and got a big win against Michigan, and everything that the Wolverines have aspired to this season, coming into the season, is still out there. A Big Ten championship is still out there. The college football playoff is still out there for Michigan. Are they still a work in progress? Yes, but the one thing that they are is tough, physical, and they're going to play hard every week, and there is a lot of pride around that winged helmet and around that football program. And I don't know if USC gets back into that game if Will Johnson doesn't get hurt. So that was a huge injury to have him come off the field. But Michigan responded to that as well, made enough plays to get a huge win. And the recruits on campus absolutely loved it. Sharon Moore and his staff do a good job of really connecting with these recruits. The kids they're players, coaches. Jim Harbaugh was a players coach. These guys are players, coaches. These guys are playing hard, and the recruits feel it on campus, and it was loud there in the big
that atmosphere had to be one of the most electric atmospheres. I would have given anything to be on the sidelines of that one. Speaking of being on the sidelines, Michigan had a really important linebacker on campus, Nathaniel Owusu Boateng, who's at IMG Academy, and it's coming down to the end of his recruitment, how important do you think it was for him to be in this environment?
Well, I talked to him after the game. He said the environment was electric. He said his family loved it, and he loves their scheme, how he'll be developed on and off the field. I think that's always an important component with Michigan. When most of their players pick the Wolverines, look, they're making football decisions. They want to hear their names called in the NFL draft, and they want to play for championships. Michigan's won 3 straight Big Ten championships. They've done as well as just about any program in the NFL draft over the last 5 or 6 years. They're certainly in the top 5 programs of having players drafted. And then Michigan's going to have a need at linebacker next year, so he sees an opportunity to make an early impact. He told me his official visit to Michigan was his best visit at that time. I asked him where Michigan stood after this. He goes, I would just say they keep leaving good impressions every time I'm back in Ann Arbor. Chad Simmons, our colleague, had the report earlier this week. He's going to go back to Notre Dame. That's who they're really battling, Notre Dame. His brother, Jeremiah Owusu, was the Buckus Award winner in South Bend. And when you're strongly considering Michigan and you're strongly considering Notre Dame, you know, those programs have a lot in common. Sometimes Michigan and Notre Dame stick out as a finalist. And so it's an easy decision for a prospect to either go to Michigan or Notre Dame or not, depending on what they're truly into. But when they're head to head, it's a war because those schools both offer a lot of the same things on and off the field that this young man is looking for. But a Notre Dame legacy recruit that knows so much about Marcus Freeman in that program, for Michigan to be here and give him some of the best visits that he's had of the process shows a lot about what it's like for a prospect to go visit Michigan. I talked to another Michigan commit, Kenoa Winston, who's a Penn State. His brother's one of the best players at Penn State. Penn State's got championship aspirations. Kenoa Winston's going to go his own way and go play at Michigan. He said Owusu Boateng was hyped up after the game. He felt like this was the perfect game to come and see what Michigan football is all about. Hard-nosed, gritty football. Let's bring in Hayes Fawcett. Hayes, let's talk some Michigan with you, Hayes. You had the edit for Kenoa Winston's recruitment. When I predicted the young man to Michigan, I was surprised I was putting that pick in because I think when his process started, you figured Penn State, the way that they play defense, they're typically one of the best defenses in the country under Franklin. They limit points. They get a lot of tackles behind the line of scrimmage. They get off the field on third down, a lot of turnovers. But Kenoa Winston's going to Michigan. What do you remember from that recruitment? He's one of the jewels of this Wolverines class.
Yeah, Steve, like you said, Penn State legacy. From my conversations with him, it really was. I mean, Michigan seemed like it was always a school, you know. Penn State was definitely in it. And, you know, whenever he committed, it really did kind of start, I guess, like the most hot Michigan's been on the trail this summer. You know, they landed Jacob Washington from New Orleans shortly after, Julius Holly, Jasper Parker, Donovan Johnson, Caden Strayhorn, guys like that. And yeah, no, Michigan has a top 15 class in the 2025 team rankings. And, you know, big win at the Big House today against USC. Definitely showing a lot for sure.
And Michigan's class is better than that pound for pound. When you start looking at average ranking per commit, it's a couple spots higher there. Were you around Ivan Taylor's recruitment much too?
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
That's one. They flip him from Notre Dame, and now they're battling to keep him again with Alabama and Notre Dame trying to come back around. But just kind of talk about how you remember Ivan Taylor's commitment playing out to the Wolverines.
Yeah, that's another one that kind of happened in the hot, I guess you can call it the hot streak for Michigan recruiting. I remember moments after that, they landed Olesh, the tight end. But yeah, going back to what you were saying, I just remember being in contact with Ivan. He had actually been kind of trending to Alabama a little bit at the time as well. And, you know, I think he was fresh off of that Alabama visit, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 2 weeks out. And yeah, I mean, he just hit me up and, you know, told me he was going to flip to Michigan and, you know, was very excited about it and very excited about the trajectory of the program as well. So that's basically all I remember in terms of that recruitment.
Steve, one more prospect I wanted to talk to you about that's on campus in Michigan was Alex Graham, committed to Colorado. He's a four-star cornerback that teams are starting to kick the tires on. This weekend, he was in Ann Arbor. What do you make of Alex Graham's visit to check out the Wolverines?
Well, he's a Detroit native, back home playing his final season at Cass Tech after playing at IMG Academy. USC's kicking tires there. We'll see what this visit truly means, but seeing Will Johnson, who's kind of got legendary status now around Detroit for the career he's having at Michigan. I mean, he's the highest rated player on NCAA. Hayes, is he still the highest rated player on NCAA?
Yes, he is.
Yeah, so that alone gets you the street cred amongst the younger generation. Obviously not my generation, but the younger generation. And so seeing these Will Johnson shine at Michigan and the kind of career he's having there, and certainly probably the kind of money he's making at Michigan, a lot said about Michigan and their NIL on the front end, but their players, if you go to Michigan and you perform on the field, it is a fruitful place to be if you do a good job like Will Johnson is. So I think that it's hard to sleep on. It's hard to sleep on the Wolverines for in-state prospects that they covet, especially for the way they're playing, especially from Detroit with the way that Will Johnson's playing and what he means to those guys, seeing the success that he's having. And Josh, Michigan hosted some stud offensive linemen in 2026, and Sharon Moore, that's where his heart's at. Zayden Krempen said it was incredible. On 300 offensive linemen from Texas return. Brett Collegier is one of those IMG Academy kids that said it was one of the best environments he's experienced. He pointed to the culture, talked about how they faced adversity and overcame it. And then Malachi Lee, he's an on 300 offensive tackle from Hawaii. I'm hearing great things about Michigan's position for him. It was his mom's first visit on campus. Sounds like they crushed it with her, so it really sets the bar for Michigan and him moving forward. So I like where the Wolverines stand with him. He's going to take some more visits, but sounds like that was a tone setter in the recruitment of Malachi Lee, who's the number 11 offensive tackle in the country in the 2026 class.
All right, Steve, before we get out of this segment, talk to USC fans here. USC recruiting has been red hot. We've been talking nonstop about the Trojans. They lose this game on the road to Michigan. Put it in context for USC fans. What does this mean for recruiting?
Well, they were resilient. They played hard. You can't win every game. How many teams go undefeated every year in college football? It's very rare. I mean, I thought USC, they should have a lot of pride. I mean, obviously you want to win the game, and they were up late in their defense, who I thought their defense played hard all day. It was a very physical game, and I'm sure they're disappointed that they couldn't get one more stop. If they could get off the field one more time, they win the ball game. But I think that USC is still showing you that this program is on the rise again under Lincoln Riley and the staff, a completely revamped defensive staff with Deonta Lynn, Coach Belk, Coach Entz, Coach Eric Henderson. And look, Miller Moss, that was his first big start at quarterback. And I thought he was resilient and made some throws at the end, and the moment wasn't too big for him, right? It's easy to go out there and make plays against suspect defenses. I mean, he played well against LSU, but everybody knows LSU's got question marks on defense. Michigan, they got torn up against Texas, but that's one game. Like, Michigan's got a really good defense. They got a ferocious defensive line. They got arguably the best defensive back in the country. They got veteran linebackers. And I thought that Miller Moss hung in there and made some plays down the stretch. And so my biggest takeaway on USC today is resiliency. And I think that the recruits have to see that, and they're in on a lot of great players that want to help take this program forward. Defensive line remains a big need for them as they finish off this cycle. They got the spatula out on a couple guys. They want to land Jakeem Stewart. But I don't know how you could walk away from this performance today and say that USC you feel like they're headed the wrong way. They just didn't get a win today on the road in a tough environment, but they certainly could have won that ball game. They were right there with the defending national champs, took them to the brink, and Kalel Mulling scored his second touchdown of the day with 37 seconds left, and they lost.
Yeah. Hey, if I'm a USC fan right now, when it comes to recruiting, I am not panicking. I think there's been plenty of goodwill to go around the USC program from hot recruiting in August to a great start in September. Yeah, this is a bump in the road. You lose to the defending national champions on the road. I know it's a different Michigan team, but still, I think things are going really well right now for USC and for Michigan. So, guys, talk to us. Let us know, what is your reaction to not just the game, but also recruiting. Let us know, comment section below. All right. Last stop is Tallahassee, where the Noles get their first win of the season. We are talking Florida State recruiting. And sorry, Steve, I got to get you out of here. I got to bring in Hayes Fawcett. He's got some breaking Florida State news. I know you've been sitting on this one. The announcement just went up. Florida State landed a running back commitment while the show was going on.
Yeah, Josh. Florida State landed 4-star running back Byron Lewis out of American Heritage in Florida. He committed essentially right after the Tennessee-Oklahoma game while we were on the show, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
He joins Florida State's top 20 class. You know, we've been talking about it a few times on the show, obviously, with the struggles Florida State has had. A few of their guys have decommitted, but, you know, it's good to get a guy like him in the fold. So,
yeah, talk about the timing of it all. I mean, this is were you involved in the timing of it? Because Byron Lewis was all set to decide. I think was he waiting for the end of the FSU game? Like, what happened today for him to announce at almost 12 o'clock Eastern on a Saturday night?
well, so this was actually one of the first times I've seen a commitment revealed this way. His birthday was Tuesday, I believe, and he was supposed to commit tonight around like 9:30 Eastern, I believe. Well, anyway, I get a call from him, and he said the cake at the bakery was a little bit late, and pretty late for a bakery to be open. But anyway, beside the point, he ended up getting his cake, and the way he revealed his announcement was like he lit the like top paper on a cake on fire, and it revealed the Florida State logo. So I thought that was pretty
cool.
Yeah, that's definitely a funny story in terms of him announcing his commitment.
Yeah, pretty wild. Florida State lands a commitment. They get their first win, and they get their first running back commitment of the 2025 cycle. But Steve, if Florida State had their way, Byron Lewis wouldn't be the last running back in this class. They had Usman Kroma on campus, and we've been talking a lot about Kroma on the On3 Recruits channel because he visited Georgia recently. He's been at Auburn. He's trending to Auburn, and he's set to make his commitment in about 6 days. So what are you hearing? What are you feeling on Usman Kroma coming out of this FSU trip?
Well, I think that there's been times where Florida State has been considered the team to beat for Usman Kroma. So obviously the Seminole staff getting him back to campus wants to remind him why he's been so high and keen on their program. And Mike Norvell's got a major track record of running back development going back to his time at Memphis. So even though Florida State's 1-3, there is a lot of evidence for him to point to that not only will Florida State get back on track with the 2 seasons they had prior to this one, and getting a good win against an undefeated Cal team shows how resilient they are. But just the players that he's had a hand in developing and that they're still playing in the NFL is big. So we'll see if this weekend is enough for Florida State to rally here, with Auburn and Georgia collecting a lot of the buzz here late going into his decision. Don't sleep on the Bulldogs for Usman Kroma as well. But getting those commits back, Josh, I think that's, their loyalty, the Solomon Thomases, the CJ Wileys. Look, Georgia, Kirby Smart was at CJ Wiley's game this week.
Yeah, how about that? He's really breathing down the neck of those Florida State commitments.
Right. Auburn, LSU, those are programs that are going to keep swinging at CJ Wiley. I talked to CJ Wiley about Florida State last month, and he said what's special about the future Florida State is what Coach Norvell and his staff are putting together. Florida State is a great history and tradition, and that is what this class wants to be part of, to continue the winning tradition. So I just think he's historically into the Noles. Now, again, recruiting, we're in a new age. We'll see what all these recruitments look like in November when it's time to really put all your cards on the table. I think right now people are still just sitting there playing hands,
Yeah.
including the prospects and the schools.
Yeah. We'll just take it week by week, but Florida State, boy, did they need this win, not just for the season, but also recruiting. I mean, having guys like a Solomon Thomas on campus, right? Solomon Thomas, the Sharks are circling. Miami wants him. The Gators want him. LSU wants him. But this weekend, he was back in Tallahassee. Alex Atkins back on the sidelines there in for FSU. And things seem to return a bit to normal for FSU, who's coming off that undefeated regular season. Got their first win. They are now, 1-3. It's a bit of a shocker, but FSU holding steady. They did suffer a couple of decommitments in a Myron Charles and a Javian Hilson, but since then they've maintained. And like you said, getting a CJ Wiley, Solomon Thomas, and Usman Chroma on campus this weekend, I think was pretty big for them. Moving forward though, I mean, they got to keep winning, right? We talk about programs like an Auburn, for example, who's in the second year of Hugh Freeze, but is recruiting different when you're in the fifth year under a Mike Norvell?
Well, again, I just think that historically Mike Norvell has a lot of success to point towards. And yes, getting this win against Cal was big. SMU just got a major win against TCU, so that's not going to be an easy one on the road next weekend when they go take on SMU on the road. But there's a chance for them to build some momentum if they can beat SMU on the road. And Florida State's defense has played pretty well. Then you get Clemson at your place on October 5th. Clemson steamrolled NC State. Duke's undefeated. Miami's after that. They got some tough games coming up, but I think that I think they're going to be in those games. So we'll see if they can pull out another big win or two and then rally on this recruiting class here as well. Try and keep their best guys in the fold and maybe see who they can come back around on as this cycle continues.
Yeah, I agree. Florida State fans, it must feel good to get that first win of the season. Talk to Steve and I. How are you guys feeling, not only about the team, but also this recruiting class that Mike Norvell trying to push into the top 10? Let us know how you're feeling. Comment section below. All right, there you have it. Another recruit reaction in the books. Can we bring in Hayes Fawcett? We need to take a bow. There he is. Hayes Fawcett himself in the flesh. All right.
Steve, I want to ask Hayes, keep this part of the Florida State section. When did CJ Wiley tell you he was going to be a Nole?
And it was definitely days before the announcement. Obviously that was a big shocker. I know it was
shockers for the other schools.
Yeah, no doubt. Florida State, Georgia, and LSU. A lot of people believed it would be Georgia or LSU, and then he chose Florida State. But yeah, no, he let me know a few days before, and I was shocked myself.
Yeah, I think that was probably the shocker of the summer. Would you say, Steve?
Well, I never predicted that one because I didn't know what he was going to do. It's not like I thought that he was going somewhere else and then just picked Florida State. It was intriguing. It was the most intriguing one because I had no idea where he was going to go. Shocker. I mean, there was just people assuming he would go to Georgia, and maybe he still will. And I think that they said promising things to Georgia and LSU that if you were talking to just one staff, you would feel good that that program was in a good spot. But I just could, CJ Wiley's commitment, I had no idea what he was going to do when he announced it. It was, but he was fresh off a Florida State visit. They got the last visit too, if you remember that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see what Florida State can do moving forward. They got a lot of great commitments. They need to kind of replace what they lost in the trenches when they lost Myron Charles, who flipped to Texas, and then Javian Hilson, one of the top edge prospects in America, remains uncommitted right now. So they got a little bit of work to do still on the trail. This win should help. So Florida State fans, talk to us. Let us know. Comment section below. How we feeling? All right, boys. Recruit reaction week 4. This is week 4 in the books. Great job, Hayes. Great job, Steve. Thank you guys for being here. Like and subscribe. We're going to do this every Saturday. Next week, we got a big one next week, boys. I got to get my rest because Georgia, Alabama, we're going to have hundreds of recruits on campus for that one. We're talking about it all. Thank you for joining us. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the On3 Recruits channel, whether it's the Inside Scoop, the Wiltfong whip around, the 5-star flex. You want to be a part of it all? Hit subscribe, and we will be back next Saturday with more recruit reaction.